Hello and welcome to Let Me Be Your Game Guide, a podcast that spends each episode delving into a mystical new video game, exploring its charms and challenges, and helping you decide if it should be next on your list. I'm your host Emma, and with me are my co-hosts Rylan and Sean. Join us as we escape reality and enter the metaphysical. For the remainder of this episode, let me be your game guide.
I'm wearing shorts and a jacket.
I'm wearing a turtleneck and jeans.
Oh, I'm just going shorts and a t-shirt. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Well, welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Hey!
Oh, just kidding.
Is that staying in?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Yeah. Hi. Welcome back.
Oh, we are okay. Hey, yeah, okay. I thought we were restarting. All right, here we go.
It's a warm opening.
Yo, I like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
right into it.
Yep. We're just going to get right into
That
it.
sounds great.
But no, we're not. They're doing the opposite. Today, we are talking about a game that I picked, Selfloss.
The floss.
I know. Every time I say it, it's like, Selfloss.
Yeah.
But I picked this game mostly because it had just been released. We'll talk about it. It released it's October now, last month, but it had just come out. I thought it would be fun to do a game that was fresh and new and that not a lot of people had the opportunity to play. I was a little sad that I didn't time it right, so I was doing a spooky game during October, and then it just happy accident. There ended up being some spooky parts.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
cool. Well, we'll just get right into talking about the developers. This was developed by Goodwin Games. It was published by Goodwin Games, Maximum Entertainment, and Merge Games. It's available for Windows, Mac OS, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and S. So you can play this in a lot of different places.
Mm-hmm.
It was released originally. It was scheduled to release September 12th, 2024, and that is when it released for the consoles. But it was made available early on Steam. It was available September 5th, 2024. And this game is $24.99 when it's not on sale. Yeah. So just a little bit about Goodwin Games. They were founded in 2022 by Alex Goodwin, and I couldn't find a ton about the developers. They didn't have a very robust About Me page, but it's just a 3-person team, and all 3 are credited in this game. And they're
It's a small team.
Yeah, especially for the way that this game looked. I mean, it is a small team, and it looked great. So.
Yeah.
Alex Goodwin, and again, also in the credits of the game, it didn't really credit anyone for doing anything specific, but Alex Goodwin on their About Me page is doing programming and music. Again, he's also the founder of Goodwin Gaming, or of Goodwin Games. Margarita Gorakova, I hope I'm saying these names right. They have another game listed on their website called Maru. And this seems to be Margarita Gorakova's project. And then lastly, there's Dmitry Nakabin. Gosh, I feel like I'm butchering these names. I'm so sorry. Also credited for this game. So yeah, 3-person team worked on this game. And if I can find any of their social media pages or any of the extra work that they do, I will link that in the show notes. You guys can go take a look, and I'll just link the Goodwin Games main page as well. So that's just a little bit about the developers. And if I find anything else, any buried gems of websites that have more information that I didn't originally find, I will post them in the show notes. But for now, that's about all I know about our developers. So we'll move into the accessibility review and then the game rating for Selfloss. A real quick description of the game. Take to the high seas in this beautifully designed adventure. Perform the self-loss ritual to help others heal from the loss of a loved one, and maybe find some healing of your own on the way. So just before we get into the rating, did you guys want to describe a little bit about the game? I know Rylan, you're here as a
perspective.
listener.
I'm a perspective personality is what they call me.
Yeah.
I basically played a demo of this game. I only got about an hour in, and then I had life that happened, and so I didn't finish the game like I normally do. So yeah, this game, it is from what I played, it's an adventure puzzle game. You are an old man traveling through, seems like a purgatory type situation, and I know you guys know more about like the plot and everything, so can expand on that more as we probably get into the spoiler section. But you're an old man, you're traveling, you have some in a mystical land with giants and sea life that flies, and it's interesting.
Yeah, I won't elaborate too much more on it. I'll kind of wait until we get later on. But I mean, I think that kind of fills out the game. I mean, it's a big puzzle game that you help some people. You're trying to also kind of figure out yourself at the same time. But overall, yeah, I would agree with Rylan and what he said. But I'll say more once we get later on to the show.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think we mentioned, but this is the spoiler-free rating episode. We'll get into definitely more details once we get into next episode. We'll talk about, spoilers and all that jazz. But this episode, there will be no spoilers, so no worries about that. But we'll get into it a little bit here in a second. Before we get into our actual ratings, we're just going to go over the accessibility review. Again, this game is so new, I couldn't find one that existed already, but when I can't find a pre-made accessibility review, I kind of make my own with I think it's called the Family Gaming Database. I go off of their template that they use, and I do my best. I'm not an expert by any means, so I'm doing my best, and I'm just listing what features are available. So if you're wondering, I didn't hear about this, I wonder if this is available. If I didn't mention it, it's probably because it doesn't exist. So real quick, for controls, you can play this with multiple buttons and 2 sticks on a gamepad. And for a mouse and keyboard, it can be played with a mouse and multiple keys. There is no documented accessibility features for the difficulty section, which deals with adjusting challenge of play. Getting started, there is assistance getting started with helpful tutorials and instructions on how to play, assistance for progressing the game, notices if you get stuck and provides information to help you progress. I was on the fence about this one, but there are certain parts where you'll walk your character to a certain position, and it will flash on the screen the button you're supposed to push or kind of what you're supposed to do, which I think can be categorized as what I just stated. For reading, the reading level is moderate, which 14 plus reading level if you're in high school and above. There might be some difficult words, but nothing that you couldn't kind of trip your way through. Subtitles, all speech are subtitled or there's no speech in game. Captions, textual captions indicate who is speaking and their tone. For navigation, menus don't wrap and the cursor stops at the bottom of the list if you press down. And for visual, the game is generally well contrasted. There is a flash warning at the beginning of the game for those who are prone to seizures, so there is a lot of flashing in this game. This is not a motion sickness friendly game. I don't usually get motion sick when I play video games, but I honestly could see this being a very nauseating, sounds so offensive to the game, but not in that way. There is just a lot of uncontrolled movements that happens while you're playing. It's also, I don't think that there's anything that would make it not colorblind friendly, but I'm trying. Oh, you know what? No, it would not be colorblind friendly. There is a puzzle that depends on colors.
Yes, there is.
So that is that for accessibility. Again, I'm doing my best, but I'm not an expert. So if you play the game and realize that I got something wrong, I don't know. You can email the podcast at letmebeyourgg@gmail.com. Just
nice plug.
Roast
Yeah,
me
that
or
was
something.
good.
I don't know. Oh, man. But let's get into the game rating, spoiler-free game rating. We take into account general considerations such as length, challenge rating, and replayability. We also consider story and narrative topics, including plot, characters, world building, and content variety. Presentation topics, including graphics, sound design, and music. And something new on the list, mechanics. We've added mechanics to our rating. And lastly, we consider the overall value of the game. Is it worth paying the full price to play it? So let's just jump right in. Length. We just all discussed this off mic because we needed to figure out how long we'd played, but sounds like Sean and I are on about the same page. 10 hours.
Yeah, I would say roughly around there. Yeah.
Felt long.
Yeah, it was a lot longer than I thought. Like there's definitely some sections that seemed like they flew by really quick. And then there were some sections I was like frogging through, like just getting it done. And it took a while to get through. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
I played for like an hour and a half almost.
Wow.
Speed run.
Nice, dude.
There are 5 chapters in this game. How many chapters did you make it through in an hour and a half?
I didn't finish the first chapter.
There you go.
Yeah. So
yeah, so maybe hour and a half, 2 hours for each chapter.
Yeah.
Tracks. So moving on to challenge rating, our scale starts at beginner, escalating to easy, then moderate, difficult, and topping out at expert. I put my rating at moderate. Some of the puzzles were fairly difficult, not impossible, but I did have to leave and come back just because I needed a break from them. And then combat was pretty difficult. I think we'll talk about it later, but it may have been due to some mechanic issues or just the way that the game functioned, but I set it at moderate.
Yeah, I would also set it at moderate. I would agree. Like some of the puzzles were a challenge and it took multiple tries to figure it out. And a few times where I feel like I didn't have all the pieces and I had to leave and then come back and then I figured it out. The combat though was somewhat difficult, like, because of the mechanics themselves in the game, it really was a challenge to kind of, get past some obstacles that you needed to. So, moderate.
Yeah.
Yeah. From the game that I experienced, I would rate it as an easy, if not for the combat that I encountered. I did also find that pretty hard.
Mm-hmm. And it definitely, from that first chapter, combat escalated very quickly.
Oh, really?
Not really the type. I mean, well, I don't know if it's a spoiler or not. There's that you get different levels of enemies.
Sure.
They do get a little more difficult. But it more became just the number of enemies. It increased from easy to moderate was probably that alone.
Yeah, there's also some other things you have to consider in the game while you're fighting these enemies that you have to constantly kind of keep an eye on. We can talk about it more later, but it's just something else that you have to keep track of while you're also trying to fight these guys. So
yeah, and if you don't keep track of it, it can literally hinder your ability to defeat the enemy.
I died so many times.
Yeah. I think sometimes I was like, just take me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'll start over.
Yeah, for sure. I was at many points. Yeah.
So for target audience, I think that anyone who enjoys puzzle games and deep world building would enjoy this game. Again, getting a little ahead of myself, but there was a lot of world building, and I thought it was really interesting, especially because we've done a game, and we didn't mention this. This game is very Slavic inspired, I think, because of where the developers are from. And because I did so much research on was that our second episode, Pilgrims?
Yeah, Pilgrims was number 2.
Go back and listen to episode 2, because that's also a very Slavic folklore inspired game. So I had done some research on that folklore, and some of it does come into play in this game. So I thought that was really cool. So if you're into that sort of thing, if you're also looking for, just kind of like a really like a good feeler game. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it hits you in the feels.
Yeah, it definitely does. And because there's a lot of emotions or thoughts that you have while you're playing the game in the process of trying to help these people and help yourself. I would also say if you're into like cinematic style games, this would be a good one because it definitely has like a Words are hard. It definitely has a feel of that. So, especially with like camera angles and that kind of thing. The way that they show you in the world is very cinematic. So, got it that time. So, yeah.
Yep. Also, age rating wise, this is rated T for teen, and that is for blood and fantasy violence.
Oh,
so that's we haven't been including that, but
I think that's a great inclusion. I also just wonder, I don't know what's all included in like the SRB rating system, but I do think like the theme is a little heavy.
It is
in the beginning, at least from what I experienced. Like there's themes of like loss, obviously, which you can probably tell by the name, but also like at least a small theme of like self-harm at the beginning. So I think that kind of kicks you off on your journey to rediscovering yourself or doing some personal healing as the character.
Yeah, definitely a heavy game. That is a good thing to point out because it carries that theme throughout, and it just is, it's about loss and healing, and so that can be a very heavy topic. For replayability, how did you guys feel? I know, Rylan, you didn't totally finish the game, so very replayable for you.
Yeah, playable.
Yeah, playable. What did you think, Sean?
I would maybe later on, like I'd put it down for a couple of years and then I'd probably come back to it. Like it is a fun game and the experiences that you have are good, and there is a lot of lore and different things inside the game that you can find and figure out. But yeah, I would probably say put it down for a little while and then you could come back to it later. So
yeah, I agree. This is definitely something that I would have to set down for, I don't know, maybe a year, but I would love to come back and replay it. Not something that I'm just going to start back up and crunch through again. It is cool that once you've finished, you can play certain chapters over. So once you've played through the whole game from the main menu, you can just choose to start at certain points. And that also allows you to go back and do all the collectible items and stuff like that. So if you didn't get something, there are some things that you collect. And if you didn't get those on your first playthrough, you can go to the specific chapters to find those. And now we'll move into the number rated section, starting with story and narrative. What did you guys think of the plot?
I think it was between a 3 and a 4. It definitely seemed very like plot forward. Like you definitely had a reason to embark on your journey, but it was also a very mysterious world. Some of the collectibles gave you lore. So that was, for the few that I picked up, that was fun to like read and kind of learn about the world. So I can't really speak to like the overarching plot, but I was definitely intrigued with the gameplay that I had.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the things you collect that give you lore, it's very similar to the last game we played, Cavern of Dreams. You can kind of pick things up and it gives you information. This is definitely a lot more, it's more world building driven, the things that you collect. And if you play the game, or if you don't mind spoilers, in our spoiler episode, we're going to talk about all of that. I'm going to read all of the cards, and so you can really get a deep understanding of the world and the lore. So I also put it at a 3. And there are some flashbacks, not to really spoil anything, but you do get some more insight on your own life. So there was a lot of plot going on, but I kind of wish that there was more. I gave world building a much higher score. I think I had plot higher originally, but realized that it really is because of the world building. So I put it at a 3.
That's fair.
Yeah, I would say between 3 and 4. The farther that you get into the game, it really kind of expands, and they really go a little bit deeper into what's causing the world to do what it's doing. And so you kind of get a better understanding of how that happened, and kind of gives you an idea of the world itself, like Emma was saying. So yeah, I'd say between 3 and 4.
For characters, I also gave characters a 3. I will say you don't meet a ton of characters. It really is just kind of yourself, but there were a couple characters that even though I didn't learn a ton about them, I became very attached to them. One in particular.
I would also say a 3. like Emma was saying, there's not a whole lot of characters, but they do bring a richness to the story and kind of help you along in your path. So, and you help them sometimes as well. So it's kind of a give and take in the relationship that you guys have, but it also allows you to advance in the story and where you need to go. So,
Yeah.
I don't think there was a lot of characterization in the time that I played, so I think just a 3 sounds good. Like, I think the character that you play as has kind of an unraveling story, and at least from what I played, there's some, like, sort of mythical figures that you meet a little bit. Those seemed interesting.
And we've reached world building, which I've touched upon a couple times already. I gave world building a 4. It was close to a 5, but there was just like a teensy bit that I wish they would have elaborated on more. But I just thought that it was built out in such a cool way, and each chapter has almost a different theme, but it's all very obviously the same world. And being able to uncover such depth through just collecting these little I guess they're scrolls technically, not cards. But you're collecting these. All of them kind of match where you are. You're learning about the things that are present in the chapter that you're in. So it was just so exciting for me. And I thought it was just very rich.
yeah, I would agree. I would probably give it a 4 as well. They really do delve into a lot of the lore and the world within those scrolls. And then also the flashbacks that you have in the game kind of flesh out some of the other aspects of it. So they talk about some of the bigger things, while the cards also, explain where you're at, explain the environment, the world, people, things. So, it's very good.
I feel like it was a 4 approaching a 5 for me as far as the world building. I really enjoyed the, like, snippets of the lore from those scrolls like you guys mentioned. I, like, want to give a specific example that happens at the very beginning of the game. I think it may be the first scroll that you can get. It discusses Morena, I think is how you say her name.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like some kind of goddess that oversees this purgatory land that you're at. And what kind of her role is that she gives people in this state between living and death like a quest, basically. And the quest is not consistent between people. It's kind of whatever she determines. And that's something you only learn from the scroll that you pick up, but you do see her at some point and she kind of just gestures off in some direction, I think a little before you can get that scroll. And so it's really neat the way that, like, as you're adventuring through this, and then the world details are supplemented by these scrolls and this information you can gather, and you can put the details together about this, like, really solemn environment that you're going through, and kind of learn where there's not like a narrative specifically that's explaining everything that you're doing. You kind of pick up snippets and put the pieces together. I think it makes it a really rich experience to kind of play the game and explore this world.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Mhm.
it really was. I think of all the games we've played so far, I think world building wise, this game really shined. It outshined almost every single other game that we've played.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Lastly, in story and narrative, we're going to talk about content variety. What did you guys think?
I would give it a 4. In the reason being is that it's almost like similar to the other games that we've played. Death's Door, Cavern of Dreams. You get teleported into these, even though it's the same world and it kind of looks a little bit similar. Some of the places are vastly different, and they give you a lot of variety in between the chapters. So you may be, in chapter 1, you're in just a solemn area. In chapter 2, you're doing some other stuff, and it moves on through that. So there's a lot of variety between the chapters that you get to experience. And also, there's also a lot of variety between the enemies in each chapter. So that also kind of expands things, and I guess, the power that you receive in those chapters. So
Yeah, I agree. I hesitantly gave it a 4, but I think it does deserve a 4 because not only does the world have a lot of variety, but the puzzles are so different. I don't
Yeah.
think, like,
mhm.
every single puzzle you solve is so different. There's a bunch of different enemies that the combat it's styled a little bit differently. And then there's also just a lot of different I don't even know how to explain it without really you're not always just solving puzzles or doing combat or walking around. There are some times where you're trying to get away from something, or
Mhm.
you are on a boat and you're navigating the water. There was just so much to do aside from puzzles and combat. There was just a lot, and there was so much to explore.
Mhm.
Yeah, I felt like this was a 3. Just in the beginning that I played, it's like there were big variety in the puzzles. There's also some combat, there's some exploration, like, I'm not sure if platforming is I think platforming might be too strong of a word, but there's, like, a little bit of, like, you need to, like, figure out the path that you need to take to get places. Yeah, you're driving your boat around. You have a magic staff that has some different abilities, that are unique, and I don't know, there is quite a bit of variety for, like, this sort of game, I felt like. It wasn't as, like, 1 or 2 note as I might have expected.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really thought it was just gonna be like a cinematic experience like some other games, but it really turned out to be something a little bit different. So it was very
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah. So, moving into the presentation section, we're going to talk about graphics, sound design and music, and mechanics. So, we'll start with graphics.
I would give this a 4. It did look really good to me. It's not like a realistic looking game, but in the I'm gonna almost say like cartoony, I don't know, abstract kind of look. It looked very clean and looked really good. So I would give it a 4.
I think for me, it's a 3. It did look good. It's had, like, a nice smooth cartoony style, like you said, Sean. Nothing really stood out especially to me with it, but I do think that some of the locations, like, did look pretty nice, like, at least the beginning, you're, like, on, like, a set of islands, basically, and it was very pretty, but it didn't especially stand out to me,
I gave it a 4 as well. Rylan, I wonder if you would have kept playing, if you would have given it a higher score.
potentially.
Just because as you progress, you get into some very different looking areas, and there are some super beautiful parts to this game. So I gave it a 4. I just thought it was extremely well done, extremely beautiful. You do get, obviously, there's sea creatures
Mhm.
around, and the way that they were done it was nice.
Yeah, because I mean, some of them were in the water, but some of them were floating in the air, and there's moments where they kind of point out the graphics in a way, so they really make that stand out and make that present. And yeah, it looked really good to me. So
Some of the tools you have at your disposal involve light, um, which I don't think they did a bad job, but it was hard for me not to compare against Death's Door, which just had the most amazing lighting. So I was constantly, not constantly, but I was somewhat disappointed by, like, the mechanic of shining a light around and it not, like, working quite well all the time.
That's
So
true.
yeah,
I'll definitely talk about that a little bit in the mechanics.
sure.
Yeah, but
oh,
I can see how that affects the graphics as well now that you're comparing it to Death's Door, because there were some excellent lighting and
I
shadows in
think about
that
it so
game.
much.
And I think they definitely could have done more with
Yeah.
that light staff.
Although again, like, 3-person team, I think what they've pulled off is it's still great.
Yeah.
hmm
It's just not special to me.
We'll do sound design and music next. I was in between a 2 and a 3. I guess I have to think about it a little bit more as I talk about it, and maybe I'll hear what you guys have to say. There wasn't a lot of music going on in the game, but very randomly, a song would play that had lyrics, and I believe it
Oh,
was in a different language. Um, and it would randomly play at certain parts. I think I only heard it like once or twice, but it was beautiful. It was a beautiful song, and I wish I would have heard it more. But because it wasn't really present during most of the game, and I don't really remember hearing much background music, that's why I originally wanted to do 2. But you also get a lot of these whale calls and like sea animal sounds echoing through the game, which at parts it was so relaxing, and like just sound design in general. Even when you're walking through like the muck, you can hear your little feet like splatting through the muck. So I really am stuck between a 2 and a 3. We'll see how I feel after hearing you guys.
I think I would give it a 3. Kind of along the same lines. Like there was music playing, and a lot of it was like, I don't know, serendipity. It was very just even emotionally charged, I guess. It was very like whimsically, I don't know how to explain it, but very in the moment, I guess. So it made you immersive into the space. But yeah, it also it was nice to like, oh, you hear like this whale call or this orca call or something, and you're like, oh, that's cool. And then you see it flying by and you're like, wow, that's crazy. So the sound did bring something to it. I will say that there is parts in the game where sound can be really important. And if you don't have the sound on, it makes it incredibly difficult to do. Which was a little bit frustrating because I have a little, and I'm like trying to play it like 1:00 in the morning and not wake anyone up. And now I have to like turn this up so I can do this one thing. So it made it, there wasn't any visual cues to it really. So you had to listen for this little sound. And so, yeah, that made it difficult. But outside of that, I thought the sound was very well done.
I have no memory of the sound. I'm a very bad auditory learner. There wasn't anything that I remember as being bad, though. I'm sure it was fine. I've been giving it a 2. I remember nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think it wasn't super memorable, but during the game, especially with the animal noises, it was just like very unique and very calming.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, there's something about whale noises. I guess that's why they probably put those on like the noise machines when you're trying to go to sleep and be relaxed. And then lastly, in the presentation section, we're going to talk about our new section, which is mechanics.
I want to go first.
Okay.
Because I have the least experience. And I'm about to do some ragging on this game.
All right.
I cannot stand the speed at which the character moves.
It was so slow.
Okay. I'm glad it wasn't
he's
just me.
He's an old man, but yeah, it was incredibly slow.
I know that he's an old man and like it's the theme, but like kind of they made him like a CrossFit old man or something. Like he moved so damn slow. And so like I don't think that was a problem all the time, but especially like during combat, the limited combat that I had, it was atrocious. Like I don't think, from what I experienced, I don't think combat belonged in the game at all. I thought that should have been taken out. The controls also weren't especially intuitive. Like you kind of had to get used to it a little bit, but you have this magic staff that shines a light, and you need to have that light like hit things correctly. And sometimes you just can't get it to aim. You got to wiggle it a bunch to get it to, like, maybe they needed to have some sort of like auto lock on for things that are like supposed to be targeted or something like that.
Yes, that would have been nice.
But for otherwise, I think it was okay. Like I didn't really have that much of a problem like figuring out where to go, or like once I figured out what to do, it was more like maybe fight with the controls a little bit to do it, but the gameplay itself was pretty smooth. Like it wasn't jittery or anything.
I have a little bit to say about this and also ragging. So I would agree with Rylan. The light aspect was, I liked the concept. It was very cool. I played it on the Switch and it made it difficult to use at times because it was very jittery. Like if I was trying to move, it's on the right stick and you would move your light around. Well, sometimes you have to like track a rune or track a person, and it was very difficult to keep it on that person without going back and forth constantly. And so I had a hard time with that concept. I got through it. It was fine, but it could have been smoother. The big thing that I have mechanics wise, and maybe this is more for like accessibility or visual aspects, but the camera angles sometimes Oh, it was the worst. Like, I'm in my boat and I'm like trying to get through a certain area, but because of the cinematic views, I would find myself like behind trees, or like there was a ruin right there and I can't see where I'm going, even though I'm trying to go the right way. And so that made it incredibly difficult to get through some areas because I'm trying to go somewhere in my boat and I can't figure out where I'm going. So, I did like the views of the game, but sometimes it was very difficult because of that. The slowness of the character was rough for sure. And there's also certain points where it was extremely rough because you had to like Emma was saying, you had to like run away from somebody, or you have to like move through a certain area, and depending on what terrain you were in, you moved even slower.
Mhm.
So that made it even more difficult to try to get through spaces while you're still considering some other things. So yeah, not to gripe too much, but I had some gripes.
Yeah, I had similar. This was definitely the part of the game that I enjoyed the least. And it's kind of sad that we're ending on this because we're ending on kind of a bad note, but it didn't ruin the game for me. I got used to the clunky mechanics, and I think maybe, this game did just come out. They might release patches that fix this a little bit. I'm not sure what their thoughts on it are.
Sure.
But I did find not being able to control the camera angles could be a little difficult if I was trying. It would start to turn, and I'm like, no, 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 I'm trying to look at the side of the wall.
Yeah.
And then honestly, give me a game and I'll find a way to glitch into a wall because I just do stupid stuff when I'm playing games.
Oh, I did that same thing, but it was later on in the game and I glitched out of the map.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'm like on the outside of the
no.
map, like on my boat, floating around, and I'm like, I don't know how I did that, but apparently I did that. So
that's so
yeah.
funny. I just because there was a function of kind of like charging your boat and like accelerating, and I accidentally did that into a spot where it just got me stuck, and then I had to quit the game.
That's exactly what I did, and then I went out of the map. So yeah.
Yeah, so there were just a couple things that I was like, oh, that's unfortunate that happened. But again, the slowness of the walking annoyed me in the beginning, but I really got used to it and it didn't bother me for the rest of the game. But there was a little bit of room to grow in mechanics. But again, it's 3 people. What they created is amazing.
Yeah.
And I don't want to end this part of the episode on a bad note because I really enjoyed this game. And I loved just the way that it made me feel. It wasn't a super happy game, but it was about, dealing with that loss and dealing with those feelings. I mean, it touched a lot on like loneliness, and I just thought it was very well done. It tugged at my heartstrings, which I'm a sucker for.
Yeah, and I do want to highlight again, like Sean said, like some of the mechanics in here were super unique. Like I don't know if that staff that you have travels with you the whole game, but the staff shines a light. You can disconnect it from your person to shine and aim the light from a different location while you walk around somewhere else. The boat I found was really cool because the way it interacts with the water is like amazing. I've never played a game like that where like as the waves go, you really feel that as you're going through. Your boat goes up and down. It affects your turning and acceleration.
The physics
with the waves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a really impressive part of the game for me.
Mm-hmm.
I also really liked on the boat how you use your staff again. You can either you can use your staff to shine like a light to make it like a sail made out of light to get quite a bit of boost, or if you're using your staff to like shine a light, like for puzzle solving, the old man just rose and you go quite a bit slower. Thought that was a super nice touch, like a really, really creative, like puzzle solving / combat tool. I thought with that staff and the light,
Definitely.
I hadn't seen anything else like that. I don't think.
Yeah, and I would agree with Emma. Like even with my gripes, my many gripes, it's still very new, and even with that, like I still really enjoyed the game. Like it was still a lot of fun. It did make for some frustrating moments, but overall, like the game was really good and a really good experience. So even over heavy topics, it was still very good. So
yeah. And the last thing we're going to talk about, now that we're out of the numbered rating part, is value. Did you guys think this was worth $24.99?
What do you think? You only played an hour and a half, so
I think that I want to know more about the story than I want to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think so for me. I, especially hearing that there's more combat coming, I'm like, this is not the sort of game that I want combat in. I just, combat in a game for me needs to feel very different than what I experienced. And if that's going to be like a regular thing in this game, I'm like, maybe not the one for me.
I would say yes, but if you caught it on a sale, it would be better.
Mhm.
So, because even what you get in the game for that amount of money is pretty good. I wish the mechanics were a little bit better. But with it being a new game, the story itself was really great. And yeah, it was still overall a good game with some unique puzzles and unique mechanics that they had created. So overall, I would say yes, but if you got it on a sale, it'd be better.
I 100% agree. That's basically what I wrote. I'm not upset that I paid full price for this game because it was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. You get so much lore, so much information, and even with the combat by the end, I feel like I got good at figuring out the combat.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was not as intuitive as I wish it would have been. I liked the game enough that it didn't ruin it for me. And like you said, a sale, stellar. Would have been better, but I'm not upset that I spent basically $25 on this.
Yeah.
So, all right, so that brings us to our final rating. I gave this a 3.1, which is not the worst game that I've rated.
No.
It's a solid 2.59.
Wow.
I didn't do my math, but I'll say 3.5.
3.5.
Yeah, I gave it a lot of 4s, so I'm just going to say 3.5.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, anything above a 3 for me is good. That's
fair.
For me, if it's and I've noticed now that we've started playing a good amount of games, I'm kind of a stingy rater. I don't know. I think that I've hovered, a lot of these games have really hovered between like 3 and 3.5. And I think Cavern of Dreams, actually, I don't remember. I'll have to go look back what my highest rated is, but probably Death's Door is the highest, closest to a 4, but I thought I was going to be a little bit more, I don't know, willy-nilly with it. And
I'm the guy that like on those quizzes where it's like, how do you feel about this? Strongly dislike, neutral, like, or strongly like. I'm never strongly anything. I'm always going to be between a 2 and a 4.
Yeah.
Like, I'm never going to go beyond.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, 3.1. I would play this game again. And not bad in my book.
Yeah, I would agree.
Cool.
Well, this concludes the spoiler-free episode for Selfloss. Please join us next week for the spoiler-filled discussion episode as we dive into the details of this game and all its hidden gems. If you haven't played the game yet and it sounds like something you may be interested in, I hope you find time to play it before returning next week. Please go and give the podcast 5 stars if you liked what you heard. You can email us with any comments, questions, or constructive criticism at letmebeyourgg@gmail.com. You can also send us game requests if there's something you would like us to review. You can find us on Instagram as letmebeyourgg and on TikTok as Let Me Be Your Game Guide. I'm going to be honest, I've been slacking on the TikToks lately. I'm trying to focus more on our content, and maybe I'll get back to the TikToks, but there are some really fun TikToks that are already posted if you want to go take a look.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
We're also on Patreon. Everything's free. We don't have any paid content yet, but we're hoping to get some bonus episodes, some paid stuff on there maybe, so you could support the podcast if you wanted to. But for now, it's free. You can find us at patreon.com/letmebeyourgg. Thanks for listening. We can't wait to see you next week. And thank you so much for letting me be your game guide. GG, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Porky Small.
That's me.